Everyone laments about the downfall of college football bowl season. Those college football games, they just ain't what they used to be. I'm not too proud to admit, a while back, I was banging that same drum about bowl season. The just wasn't as good as it had been in the past. Eventually though, my view changed. I'm Shine Hollis, this is the Touchback, and today, well, we're gonna go over how I learned to stop complaining and love college football bowl season. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I'm sorry for singing. I wouldn't have to sing if I could actually find the old Capital One Bowl week commercials from ESPN. However, those are in the ether. Like, I could not find the good old Capital One Bowl week commercials. But if you're like me and you watch a lot of college football, especially during the holidays, well, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And by the way, if you do have a copy of one of those commercials, please send it my way. Anyway, when I heard that jingle, it meant that it was time for a lot of college football in a short span with matchups that we didn't normally get in time slots that, well, nothing else is happening. In my younger days in high school, the college football bowl season was everything because there was no school to attend to, and that meant I could sit at home and watch whatever sports just happened to be on the television. Perhaps one of my favorite college football viewing memories was the 2001 Holiday Bowl between Texas and Washington. That duel between Major Applewhite and Cody Pickett, between the Longhorns and the Huskies, while being one of the most exciting games you will ever watch, also happened to be on a random Friday night. The idea of Friday night college football, while passe today, was pretty much a novelty at that point in time. In fact, I actually didn't watch the first quarter, thankfully, because no one scored, because I was finishing up my shift at Johnny Rockets in downtown Plaza. I do not miss that, by the way. Anyway, I ended up going to the bar in the Holiday Inn next door where I just sat and ended up watching the game. Thankfully, the bartender there didn't care if you bought anything or not, and there was really no one in the bar on that night. So I just sat there. I watched the game play out in its entirety, waiting for a ride, and it really, I think, kindled my enjoyment of bowl season even more than it had been before. This is also a game people point to when they look back at and they go, that's what I remember college football bowl season being. That's what I want it to be. There is this misconception, or what I believe to be a misconception, that the games back then were somehow better or more meaningful than the bowl games of today. Even if you want to say the bowl games from 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 40 years ago are different from what we have today, well, that's also life. Nothing is the same. Everything evolves and is going to be different. We also know college football is changing rapidly and, quite frankly, for the worse. There isn't a whole lot that can be done about that. I mean, I will sit here and bitch on this channel about it, but it is what it is at the end of the day. But the games are still the games. We still get bowl games, at least for now we do, and that is something. Maybe the stakes are less today than they were back then. However, I would argue that it's only an appearance. That's what it only seems like on the surface. In reality, the bowl games today still matter to those playing in them. If you think kids don't care about making a bowl game, about going to a bowl game, about playing in a bowl game, you are dead wrong. Yeah, sure, every once in a while a team doesn't show up and there are reasons for that, but by and large, this still matters a lot to those involved. That's because, well, this is the playoff to many programs across the nation. We know there are 130 some odd college football teams playing FBS, and 122 of them aren't going to the college football player this season. Next season, I think you can say there's probably maybe legitimately 20 to 24 teams that have a shot of making the playoffs, but there are a lot more teams than that, and they should also have a goal, a destination, something to play for. You can sit here and say a bowl game, it doesn't matter to the Blue Bloods when an Alabama or a Clemson isn't in a New Year's Six bowl, they don't care. And you know what I say to that? Fuck them. Like, I get that they don't want to be in these low level bowl games, but that does not mean they don't have value, that these games do not matter. On the contrary, for those smaller schools, this is everything. Look at what happened when New Mexico State won the Arizona Bowl in 2017, their first bowl appearance in forever and a day. They stormed the field. I've talked about this on the channel many a time about when Idaho won the Humanitarian Bowl and fans were on the field in 2009. There are countless examples over the past few years of programs that maybe don't get the spotlight or get a chance to have their moment getting that in a bowl game. When you begin to appreciate that, and when you start to understand that the stakes involved, they may not be much for you, but they are for some, I think it can change your appreciation of college football bowl season. But you know what else changes your appreciation for college football bowl season? Actually attending these games. In 2016, I traveled down to Tucson, Arizona for the Arizona Bowl between South Alabama and Air Force. So I'd actually gone or bought tickets or planned to go to this game because I thought that's where Idaho was going to be playing in 2016, but then they went to the Humanitarian Bowl and it was like a whole thing and I couldn't change my plans. This is not the important part of the story though, by the way. The important part of the story is that I sort of got to see firsthand what this bowl game meant to Air Force fans, what it meant to South Alabama fans, what it meant to the local community as well. This was an event. It wasn't the best attended event you'll ever see, but there were plenty of people who did care and were happy to be there, to be happy watching a game between South Alabama and Air Force where, at least to most of the outside world, the stakes were minimal. I mean, personally, I had zero investment in that game, but after watching it, after experiencing the atmosphere and just being a part of the bowl game, I sort of realized that, you know what? I get it now. I sort of have a better understanding of what's happening here for these two teams, for these two fan bases, and for Tucson as a whole, which, while not one of my favorite places in the world, did a good job of hosting this game on this occasion, which I'm pretty sure actually wasn't even broadcast on TV at this point in time because they just launched the game and were like, yeah, we're gonna have a bowl here, and no one really seemed to know what to do with it. The more I've reflected back on my experience at the 2016 Arizona Bowl, it has become evident to me that while these games, they may not matter to you, they may not matter to most of the outside world, but it doesn't mean we need to destroy everything and rebuild bowl season up from the ground up. On the contrary, I think this highlights a hugely important problem that permeates the sports world. Too much focus, too much energy is put on the TV audience. What did they want? What did they want to see? How can we make this better for them? Not everything needs to be made for TV in life, especially when it comes to sports. You know, sometimes the best sporting events, the funnest sporting events, the most memorable sporting events are the ones you go to in person that are small or that aren't on television, or that are just, they're more immersive than, say, your big time spectacles. This, of course, isn't always the case. I'm not saying big events are better than small events, and I'll get into that in a moment. However, what I'm saying is we shouldn't solely focus the value of a sporting event based on its ability to bring in a TV rating. And since ESPN basically owns every single bowl game imaginable, if they don't want to have those games or they are more concerned about the ratings, then give them to someone else. Let someone else have a chance to do it. The moment when I really learned to stop complaining and start loving college football bowl season happened in 2019 when I found myself back in Arizona, this time going to the Cheez-It Bowl, followed by the Fiesta Bowl, which was obviously the college football playoff semifinal between Ohio State and Clemson. In terms of stakes, in terms of meaning, in terms of all of that, these could not be further apart on the spectrum. But when you go and you get to be a part of everything, I really understood better about just what the entire ecosystem and about why everything sort of had a role and a place. The Cheez-It Bowl that year was between Washington State and Air Force. Again, me seeing Air Force in a bowl in Arizona twice in a row. What are the odds of that? Also, just while I'm here, Air Force games are very weird because they go so fast. You almost feel like you get shortchanged. I've talked about how college football games seemingly last too long when you're in person because there's a ton of media timeouts. However, Air Force is the opposite of that because their games last like 2 hours and 30 minutes. It's a wild dichotomy. It'd be nice if we could maybe just split the difference and get a nice 3-hour college football game in. But anyway, I digress. The Cheez-It Bowl itself, while even being there rooting for Washington State, I found it to be an enjoyable experience. Look, it didn't matter in the scheme of things. No one is going to do a 30 for 30 on the Washington State Air Force Cheez-It Bowl. And most people who even attended probably don't remember much about the game. Look, I'm not going to sit there and tell you I remember every moment, every waning second of this game. But what I do remember are the memories of just enjoying the atmosphere, enjoying watching the game, being able to see this game at this point in time at Chase Field. Also, what I don't understand about the Cheez-It Bowl is that people were throwing Kraft single slices onto the field, or not really even onto the field. Just people in the upper deck were throwing Kraft single slices basically down to the lower bowl. I don't know if this was like a thing by Cheez-It. No one was saying anything. I've never really figured that out. So if you know the answer to that question, feel free to let me know in the comment section. After the Cheez-It Bowl, my next college game seeing was the Fiesta Bowl, a totally different experience. Quite frankly, I'm not even going to lie. Going to this Fiesta Bowl between Ohio State and Clemson, it was top 3 sporting games I've witnessed live. It was so good, so enthralling. You were sitting there wishing it never ended. It was an entirely different experience from what happened at the Cheez-It Bowl. I can admit that. I'm not saying that these are in any way equal. They are not. What I am saying is both deserve to exist. Both make up a crucial part of the ecosystem. You need games like the Fiesta Bowl and the college football playoffs with those high, intense stakes. Like, they are awesome to watch, but you can oversaturate it. You need games like the Cheez-It Bowl that are just sort of there. They're filling a gap in the college football landscape. It's not a case of one being better than the other. It's a case of having two things that need to exist to make something bigger a success as well, to make college football what it is and what makes college football so special. The reality of college football bowl season in modern times can't be ignored. Players opt out of games, players are transferring, coaches leave, coaching staffs are different. It can be very disjointed at times. However, I always go back to the question, what do you want from college football season? Do you want less games? Do you want only a playoff? What is the end goal here? You talk about how, well, the players don't value it or it doesn't feel like it used to feel, but the players do value it. At least most of them playing in the games do. It's the players that opt out obviously weren't going to value it in the first place anyway. They didn't want that experience, so why do you want to force them to be there? More pressing, though, is the alternative. There is no alternative. If you 86 college football bowl season, that's it. It's done. Kaput. You may get some FCS games on TV, but really all you're doing is removing more football away. You're taking it off the calendar. Personally, for me, I firmly believe there isn't anything quite like watching random college football games in December for 2 to 3 weeks, or going to these games in person and getting to experience them in person. It's an experience that honestly, it just can't be beat. This is perhaps what worries me most about the evolving and shifting college football landscape. It appears bowl games are very much in the crosshairs. If they are not extinct, they are on the endangered species list here. There is so much uncertainty, but I always come back to the fact that without these games, we lose such an important college football tradition, seeing teams from different conferences that probably just will never have the opportunity to meet regularly, facing off in some far-fetched part of the country, just going at it, having a game, competing. Why do we want to lose this? Why should we want to give this up? At the end of the day, I can admit, college football bowl season, it's not perfect. I know this. I'm aware of all of the challenges, and a lot of the complaints are certainly valid, but it's still something. It's still something worth keeping, especially when you realize how much it matters to the players who do play in the games, and the fans who do go to the games, and the teams and the programs, and the cities that get to host the games and be a part of this. College football bowl season, maybe it isn't what it used to be. However, maybe we should just stop complaining and love it for what it is, because it's a tradition worth keeping, and it's a tradition that we do not want to lose, regardless of if we don't think it's as good today as it was 30 years ago. That does it for me. I'm Cheyenne Hollis. This is the Touchback. Hashtag take it out to the 25.